Nearly 4 years ago, I started learning to trade with no prior experience. I went from watching Ichimoku Cloud strategy videos on YouTube to the top 5 in the world on FTMO's leaderboards 2 years later, where I generated a record-breaking 6-figure payout. Most trading strategies use a fixed risk reward or profit targets, and I personally don't trade this way. If you do, you'll find this video interesting. A lot of traders focus on win rate as a means of avoiding psychological burden. Aiming for small wins generally means you'll have a high win rate, which makes losing streaks shorter and easier to manage. Of course, I get that, but what's easier isn't usually what's optimal. And it's no coincidence that you'll see these small risk-reward strategies on the lower time frames, where the most aggressive traders live. These are the same traders that have instant gratification problems. You'll probably see them on Twitter all the time, and they usually use quick trades as a means of avoiding good trading psychology. One of the first rules of trading is to cut your losses short and to let your winners run. And I think a lot of people know this already. It's one of the first things you learn. And aiming for a 2R or a 3R isn't really conducive with that rule. Of course, if you're trading a range-bound strategy where you're buying at the lows and selling at the highs, profit targets may be optimal because you don't know when price is going to break out of that range and continue. But most traders that I see use a trend following system. And in my experience, a trailing stop loss will always be the most profitable profit taking method for these type of strategies. In a moment, I'll share with you my exact trade management rules which generated my $116,000 FTMO payout, but first I'd like to share some trade stats with you. At best, your standard 2R trading system will probably have a win rate around 50% or higher than 50%. And I'm going to do an example here. Let's say that you have a 2R system with a 60% win rate. So over 100 trades, you'll have generated an 80% net profit, which sounds pretty good. Now, my unfiltered AU backtesting data, unfiltered meaning that there's still a bunch of valid or average trades in there that I probably wouldn't take in the live markets. My unfiltered AU backtesting data has an average of 4.93R with a 62.74% win rate. Over 100 trades, that would be a 272% profit. Of course, you could say that my backtesting data is curated and there may be some bias and I won't be able to replicate that exactly in the live market. So I'm going to do another example here with a huge handicap where I have a 40% win rate. Even with a 40% win rate, my 4.93R generates 137% net profit, which is 57% more than the 80% profit I described in the 2R system. And not to mention that these are uncompounded. My trade management strategy is extremely simple. Each time we create a new high, I trail my stop loss 2 pips under the low created by that new high. I don't decide when to close my trades, the market makes that decision for me by breaking these lows. And most of the time when I'm tagged out of a position, it's normally the start of a downtrend anyway. By following the trend in this way, my average risk reward is very high, way higher than most traders I see. And I get to capitalize on the majority of the move by doing this. I also get to reduce my risk really quickly from where I initially entered the position. The only downside of this trade management is that trading psychology is much harder, but I believe, at least I believe this, that these trading psychology hardships only serve to make you a better trader anyway. By avoiding these psychological burdens, you're making yourself stagnant, you're not improving, but by facing them, by learning from them, you become a better trader and you're able to handle more difficulty psychologically in the future. So how did this apply in real world trading? Well, if you have a large trend, you can make a massive percentage as I did in January of 2023 when I produced a $116,000 profit on my FTMO accounts. Here's the first of 4 trades which made an 81% uncompounded profit on my prop firm challenges a few years ago. And this was an EJ reversal which made a 25% profit. Now that may not sound super significant, but if you imagine it in dollar terms, you can imagine on a 100K account, that would be a $25,000 trade in this one trade alone, which is just crazy. And you can imagine with a traditional trade management system where you're taking 2R or 3R, you're actually limiting yourself quite a lot here. Whereas by trailing my stops above the highs all the way down, the market made the decision when I was to be taken out of this trade. And you can imagine there were plenty of times during this trade where I really wanted to close out early. You know, when we were running at $10,000 profit, which was a huge amount of money, which I hadn't really seen before, I was really tempted to close out. And then over here as well, I was tempted to close out before the weekend. This all comes from greed, you know, and it's so much easier to just follow this management rule. Here's another trade, literally the following week. Obviously not every week is this good, but this trade made me 17%. And again, I had to make the decision after this pullback whether or not I wanted to hold it over the weekend. Greed comes into it, you know, I'm up again, like at this point 10%, so probably over $10,000, and I have to make the decision whether do I want to break my management rule and take that money now, or do I want to follow my management rule and let it run. And obviously following your management rule is usually going to be the correct decision. But these aren't even the biggest trades. I actually had these two trades around the same time as that last EJ trade, and this was on AJ. So a little bit of currency correlation for you here. And combined, these trades made me over 39%. And again, I had to make the decision, and you know, I'm really emphasizing this. I didn't have to choose when to close the trade. The market made that decision for me. I may have wanted to close out at this high. I may have wanted to close out at this pullback. I may have wanted to close it out before the weekend. You know, so this management rule is super powerful, and it's what leads to such profitable months for me. Now, despite a trailing stop loss being clearly far more profitable for a trend following strategy, you may prefer a different profit-taking strategy for prop firm accounts. I usually get around 1 to 2 large payouts every year, but I can imagine, again, psychology comes into this, but it may be a lot more convenient to receive a small monthly payout, you know, by having lots of small winning trades. But for personal trading accounts, in my opinion, there's no argument. The trailing stop loss is most optimal. If you're new to my channel, be sure to leave a subscribe down below. It would really mean a lot to me. I'm going to be dropping videos like this every 1 to 2 weeks, and you're not going to want to miss them. Thank you very much for watching to the end. Please comment with this emoji to show me that you made it to the end. Leave a like and have an awesome week. Thank you, everybody.